pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the city of Goddard. Thank you for the Planning Commission and all that they do to work to help our city grow and develop. I just pray that you would be with us now as we discuss the growth and the future of our city. Give us wisdom and help us be wise in our choice and our thoughts and our words. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
So before we dive into this, we'll just kind of give sort of the rules of engagement. Basically, there won't be any binding action on any of these agenda items, but if you guys decide to take any binding action for whatever reason, only the city council can take binding action during a special meeting. After the special meeting is done, we'll go through this joint workshop. We'll have a presentation by Hoffman's Consulting Group. After that, and there's an adjournment special when they adjourn the special meeting, then we'll go into the official planning commission meeting. Hopefully it'll be around 8 o'clock or 8:15 at the latest. And then at that point, planning commission can only conduct official business during that time. So that being said, if there's any questions regarding that, we'll just dive into it. We're going to try to give Hoffman Group about 10 minutes to give their presentation, and then give you guys some time to digest that and ask them any questions of Mr. Jerry Hoffman. After which, you guys will have about 45, maybe 50 minutes to conduct your conversation. And like I said, we'll try to wrap it up by 8 or 8:15 at the latest, and just dive right into the planning commission after that. So without further ado, we're going to go, you've already called the meeting to order, we've got a privilege of invocation. At this point, we're looking for a motion second for approval of the agenda.
I seek a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Somebody makes the motion. Brent seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Citizen comments.
We're going to skip citizens'
Yeah, we're going to
comments.
skip that. So.
Yes, unless we want to officially have that. I was told we don't need it, but Terry, do you want to comment if we need to have citizens' comments during the special meeting or not?
We do not.
We do not. At this point, Mr. Mayor, if you want, we'll just close citizens' comments and move forward, if you would prefer.
Move forward.
All right, very good.
Ex parte.
We're going to skip ex parte unless you want to consider ex
I
parte.
don't really like reading it because this is one time when I read it, it doesn't apply to me. But we'll pass on that too.
Go ahead and pass ex parte at this point. Thank you very much. Moving to item F. This is appointments, proclamations, recognitions, and nominations. This is F1. This is a proclamation and recognition of the life and contributions of Doug Van Amberg. So, Doug Van Amberg was born on December 25th, 1949 in Concordia, Kansas. He attended Wichita State University and was a member of the U.S. Air Force for 8 years. Doug volunteered his time in many different ways, but most notably to Goddard he served on the Planning Commission, often as chair, helping to facilitate the meeting and guide discussion related to the growth of the city. After nearly 3 decades, since 1992, Doug's last meeting of the Planning Commission of Goddard was December 2021, where he stepped down to spend more time with his grandchildren. Doug Van Amberg passed away on May 23rd of 2024. He has left a lasting impact on the community he served by his willingness to work towards what Goddard could be, which was a vibrant and growing community. So it is recommended that the City Council approve the mayor and the Planning Commission chair to sign a proclamation honoring the life and contributions of Doug Van Amberg. We will send a proclamation as well as flowers to his widow. So at this point, if you want to look for a motion in a second for approval of the proclamation.
Just real quick, Jamie, would you want to say anything or anything on the Planning Commission? Okay, that's fine. Just want to give you an opportunity. I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation for proclamation for Doug Van Amberg.
I make a motion that we approve the contribution of Doug Van Amberg.
Brent makes the motion.
I second.
Krista seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Very good. I believe the signature should be in that packet over there. This is new business. This is I-1 Hoffman Strategy Group presentation. So quick background, the city hired Hoffman Strategy Group to conduct a study for the city taking into account different drive times and potential projections for population and housing. These studies are intended to present another unbiased data point into what the city of Goddard could look like in the future. So without any further ado, Jerry Hoffman. Right, if you have any plans, this is that one right there.
Okay, thank you. Looks like the one on the right's been used the most.
Yes.
My name is Jerry Hoffman. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, and have Hoffman Strategy Group. Just to give you a little bit of background as to what we do a lot of market feasibility studies, mostly for developers. About 85% of our work is with developers who are doing retail, multifamily, single-family subdivision lots, mixed-use developments, mixed use in terms of ground floor commercial, residential above, or office above. done quite a bit of work in the Wichita market, Derby, for example, a section of about 80 acres north of Derby. Have done some work in Andover, around Park City, and then here, which I'm really thankful for all of you to have the opportunity to conduct this study for Goddard. I've done some work for some developers who are doing some projects around the Quick Trip on 400, just on the west side of Wichita. And at that time, which would have been in the fall of last year, Goddard was top of mind in our discussions because of the school district and the desire for young families and singles and couples to live here and raise a family. And so when Micah reached out to me to conduct this study, I was very pleased to do that because I really look favorably upon your community. Let me show you what I mean by that. You know where Goddard is, so I don't need to go walk through this map, but I do want to identify some of the projects that are going on here that you're already aware of, just the major levels of investment, looking at Genesis Health Center and the Hampton Inn, the water park, et cetera, the street and sidewalk construction, infrastructure that's going on. The dynamic here between Goddard and Wichita is one that Goddard may have been considered rural 5-10 years ago. I would consider it now to be exurban, meaning it's becoming much more integrated economically with Wichita MSA. If you think of Omaha, if any of you have been to Omaha, the areas around Gretna, Elkhorn, Papillion, Bellevue, all circle Omaha in a very similar way, and at one time were rural, moved to exurban, and now they're just really, because Omaha has run out of land for development, those areas are impacted. Similarly with Wichita, you see this in Kansas City, you see this in most major urban center, and Goddard won't be consumed by Wichita. I don't mean to imply that, but it will become more economically interlinked with Wichita. This is just a population forecast map. I think that's plains, what is Garden Plains in the completely way out west. This is a percentage by block group growth to 2023. And so, you know, if a block group goes from 5 people to 25 people, it's going to show a huge percentage, but not necessarily in absolutes. But you've got the area around Goddard that is growing. If you look on the east side of Wichita, out by Andover, another area of high growth. What is not pictured here in its entirety is the growth that's happening in Derby. And so this is forecasting population growth out to 2023. In your packets, however, you have a table, which I don't have in this slide. I don't usually put tables in slides, but you'll have forecasts out to 2033. And then I understand from Micah that there is some population forecasts available now by a planning group.
Wichita Area Municipal Planning Organization.
Great. This is looking at income. You know, in the red areas, we have households, $150,000 income or more in West Wichita, and then moving out to the eastern part of Goddard. And again, the major household income range, if you will, is between 100 and 125,000, which is a really solid base when you think about the housing market and what an affordable home looks like for young singles and couples. When I came out here, for example, the Eisenhower High School, all the new duplexes that are built out there, within last 2 years, this is a very popular housing type, given the price and interest rates of today's market. Predominantly homeowners, that is, there aren't a preponderance of renters in the Goddard area. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. This is just a map to visualize that, and to also think about when there is greater economic linkage to Wichita, that there is also opportunity to look at a mix of housing that would include renters. So single-family rentals, could be duplexes, could be townhomes, multifamily apartments, etc. In the future in terms of housing development for your community. This is looking at jobs, and so in the yellow in the middle is just the city of Goddard's the city boundaries, and then looking at the inflow, outflow of jobs to Wichita. So for example, here we have an estimated job base of 3,812 for 2023. The inflow coming into Goddard at 3,301 and going into Wichita at about 2,100. And so this is just showing a commuter flow that when you drive through your community every day, you see this on 400, the traffic that's going between Wichita and Goddard. People working here at the school, at Walmart, at retail, at services, etc. But they're also working nearby at the airport. They're going into Wichita to work in any number of the aviation companies, banks, insurance, etc. And so the key point here is that the demand for housing in Goddard has two drivers. People living in Wichita wanting to migrate into Goddard for schools and housing that's more affordable than in Wichita. And then second is the induced demand from the workforce, the commuter workforce that works here but is not living in Goddard, but would desire to live in Goddard. And so those are two major drivers for housing demand. This is looking at a lot of times when we are asked by housing developers, whether they're apartment developers or single-family housing developers, they ask us to profile the persona of the buyer or the renter. And that's what this table does. We use a data source called Claritas Prism. The titles are not ours, it's theirs. In some of the titles it can be a little pejorative, I think, but it nevertheless gives an idea of what the lifestyle patterns are of households that both live in Goddard, but also Goddard attracts. Fast Track Families, for example, is one of the major segments, lifestyle segments, if you will, of households that live in Goddard and that attract new residents into Goddard. And these are 35 to 54-year-old couples with families of, kids of varying age, about 117,000 in average income, meaning that an affordable monthly payment for either a house or an apartment, most likely a house, is $3,400. A mean or affordable home price is $425 for Fast Track Families. You also have country squires. These are the residents who are living outside of Goddard, out in the rural hinterland, if you will. They may be on acreages, living in homes that are around 580,000. And so this is just a way to think through the different product type for housing that would be most desirable to young singles, couples, and families moving into your community. And this is really thinking about moving into your community over the next 10 years or so. This has a long life cycle, if you will, in terms of a development horizon. This is looking at the Wichita MSA, the for sale housing market. This comes from the Kansas Association of Realtors Association. They publish this monthly. You may all have seen this before, the market research that they put together. What I really want to point out is that for Wichita, there is 1.8 months of for sale housing available, and because typically you will find 3 or 4 months is a soft market. This is a very tight market, and because of that, the prices increase for homes, and you will also have situations where there are multiple bidders for a home. Even in today's market, where interest rates may be 7% for a first-time home owner. 6 is the median days on the market. Compare with a similarly aggressive submarket in Goddard, 346 homes sold in the last 24 months. This is using Zillow and Redfin, by the way, some third-party independent sources, or 14 per month, just averaging that out. That doesn't mean last month there were 14 sold, but just averaging over 24 months. And so that yields about 2.5 months supply for Goddard. So a little tight relative to housing. I wouldn't necessarily say a housing shortage, but in order to keep up with growth, there will be need for more housing in Goddard. And I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but this is just some of the data and the analytics that go behind that statement. And so Goddard's aggressively competitive for sale housing market pushes demand for market rate rentals. You can also look at workforce housing rentals also, new home construction, and then a focus on a term missing middle housing type, which I will get into here. So if you look at the missing middle, I mean, oftentimes, you know, mid-rise, we'll see this in downtown Wichita. You'll see it throughout Wichita, where you have commercial on the main level, and this is in the far right, with residential and or office above, your normal detached single-family homes. And looking at the role of duplexes, triplexes, courtyard apartments, townhomes, etc., as providing a range or a mix of product type for housing that is appealing to future residents of Goddard. It also offers opportunities for when oh, okay. I haven't died, have I? I haven't. Okay. My presentation hasn't died, has it? Okay, thank you. And so it also presents opportunities for stepping up in housing. So if you have a young family that come in, in their 20s, late 20s, they're putting kids into the elementary school. This gives them an opportunity to move up in housing. But also as we get to 55 and over, we have an opportunity to downscale. And so it helps to create a very fluid housing market dynamic for a community like Goddard, especially given the stronger economic linkages to the Wichita MSA. This table in particular, which is a little onerous perhaps to walk through on a presentation, but what this table does is it takes the population, the household forecasts to 2033 and compares it to the housing supply, both in terms of ownership and also rentals. And so let me just walk through this for you for a moment. And so using a 10-minute drive time, there are 77 rentals in that catchment area, if you will. So it's not just Goddard itself, but the surrounding areas. And that will pick up parts of western Wichita, although not that greatly. Right now they are fully occupied. This data, by the way, comes from CoStar, Redfin, Zillow. So just looking at third party and then looking at local listings. What's planned is 213 units, which includes 108. The Genesis Health Club proposed 108. Maybe all of you can help inform me on the progress of that. Construction was supposed to start in June 24. And then looking at what is the capacity to keep up growth and maintain a 4.8% vacancy rate in rental housing. About 5% is an equilibrium rate for multifamily. That means you've got enough inventory to accommodate inflows and outflows of people moving in and out of the community. And so what we have here is the opportunity to create new housing of about 105 new market rentals in the 10-minute drive time. When we look at the housing potential, which is, where most of the housing is in terms of inventory, 11,000, let's say 11,100 is the estimated single-family for sale homes. Now that doesn't mean they're all for sale right now, but that's how many in terms of housing units there are. About 0.3%, literally they're all occupied. And so there are an estimated number of available right now at 35. Right now this was in June, so this needs to be a bit updated, but nevertheless, 35 were listed for sale. There are 2 under construction, and there is capacity for 800 to keep up with the growth rate in household owners of 772 over the next 10 years. And so what you have here is an opportunity to create a mix of housing that is both market rate multifamily as well as for sale. And the for sale can take many different product types, townhomes, duplexes, as you see by Eisenhower High School, but also the opportunity to do multifamily. My speculation would be that the 108 being proposed by the Genesis Health. Who is the family that owns Genesis Health Club, by the way? Anybody?
Steve.
Thank you. My speculation is they will lease those up very rapidly. And that will really give you an idea of what the pent-up demand is for new housing in the Goddard market. Meaning there are more people who want to move here than there's housing for. And so this creates an opportunity to build new homes and also to build new multifamily units. Now that could be apartment units, it could be townhomes that you offer for rent, duplexes you offer for rent. There are very, obviously various product types. And so I just walked through the summary right there. What those demand forecasts are in terms of new housing opportunity over the next 10 years. So the absorption rates for housing, multifamily and single family is really untested just because because of the limited inventory. But looking at what has occurred in places like Andover, in Park City, in Derby, and other areas around Wichita, this at least gives you an idea and some data for your discussions around thinking about the future of Goddard and the role of planning in that process. So at this point, we entertain any questions, and I will be around here too for the discussion, so can help participate in your discussions.
Thank you very much.
When you talked about Omaha, I kind
Yeah.
of refer to the communities around Wichita's and ring around Wichita.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you looked at the number of plotted lots, for communities go around between Mays, Park City, Bel Air, Derby, Hayesville, somewhere, each one of those groups plus ourselves, between 1,400, 1,600. You could end up somewhere between 7,000 and 8,500 potential homes.
Yeah.
We're also told in some of these, at WAMPO and some of these other meetings, that housing shortage in Sedgwick County is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 units. So if you've got that pent-up demand, and then you've got the potential for 8,500 units that exceeds the demand at some point, what type of risks do we run in terms of continuing to approve developments, especially as it relates to, there's been a lot of talk about duplexes and things, as opposed to some of the other things. Probably apartments would be something that we'd probably be readily interested in seeing how that would work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you address that whole idea of where we are, with the other communities in the ring around Wichita as it relates to our 1,500 plotted units?
Yeah, I think that it would be a really important exercise for you to undertake to do a type of master planning for your community, where you're identifying the different areas of Goddard for housing development, housing growth. And part of that master planning would then look at the different phasing for the various product types. So if you're looking at multifamily, apartments.
Because we've already got 420 duplexes
That are approved or that are approved?
approved,
Yeah, yeah.
So that, I mean,
Yeah.
that horse has left the barn.
So, I think part of your question, at least my understanding of it, Mayor, is how do you manage the growth and make approvals over when you are, when a developer brings to you plans for 1,500 new housing units, how do you make that decision around the product type and the numbers?
We've already approved that many.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about adding another 840 living units.
Right.
On top of our, 1,200 existing homes with another 500 homes on top of that.
Yes.
And if it all builds out in 5 or 6 years, our population, I don't know if it'll happen that fast, but our population's gonna go from 6,000 to 10,005 if you just use 3 people per living unit.
For sure, yeah. Well, and it also raises issues around infrastructure, right? What does your road system look like? What's your sewage, your water, utilities, the power, etc. All comes into that discussion. Those questions I can't answer for you, but the one that I can be helpful on is when you are faced with, so you have the 400 and some approved, this data is in a spreadsheet that I can give to Micah, and we can then insert what has been approved, how many numbers have been approved, how many numbers are coming in for approval, and then we can help measure what impact that has on vacancy rate and what impact does that have on the demand for additional housing inventory. So you have some at least rational way of managing growth that could otherwise get out of hand.
At least to me, it seems like we've got to this point basically flying in the dark.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I mean, hopefully this is a starting point to have some of these discussions and think about things as we're going forward, so that we actually are managing this, as opposed to it managing ours. So,
Yeah.
other questions? My first one.
The other part of that, I have a question about, 80+% of our student population in our schools lives in the Wichita area.
Mhm.
And how do we
Mhm.
account for that growth? I mean, they can move to Wichita and still come to Goddard.
Right.
So, how does that factor into any of this, or what?
I did not take into account student enrollment. Can add student enrollment and look at it would be hard for me to know where all the students live. But if you can help provide that kind of information, then we can help build that into the model.
In your modeling as you're looking forward, and I mean, I know Wichita's dealing with this with the people are having fewer kids, and you can see the cliff coming, right? I mean, that's why they just shut down a bunch of schools.
Right.
I mean, as you're forecasting out, what are you seeing as family size? What are you seeing as adult children, all that? How are you forecasting that?
Yeah. So this for Goddard in the 10-minute drive time, it's 3 persons per household.
Okay.
On average right now, and there is net in migration, and so the births are exceeding deaths, and then the people who are leaving is less than those who are coming in.
Okay.
And that's the case for Sedgwick County as well. So it's part of that whole this whole metro area. Yeah. So when we look at housing forecasts, for example, it takes into account that 3-person per household, 70% with kids under the age of 18, and then we can go even deeper in terms of how many households are between 0 and 5 and 5 and 10,
Right.
etc. But just speaking at a high level, that's where we do the housing forecast.
Thank you.
You bet. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a chart about the one that had the country squires and the fast track families and,
Yeah.
I mind going back to that.
Yeah.
So, there were several points where you mentioned about, the demand for young families to move here, which traditionally a younger family just starting out wouldn't be able to afford quite as much as a more established family. So are any of these groups the young family, is that what New Homesteaders was representing, or?
New homesteaders, 35 to 54, certainly when you look at an average income of, let's say, 110,000. An affordable home. Affordable here, I'm looking at 30% of your income goes to a mortgage. Now, for Goddard, it's more like 35 or 38% goes to housing. But, you know, a lot of cities for affordable housing purposes measure by 30%, and so that's what I'm doing here. And so 410,000, you know, we're looking at 3-bedroom to 4-bedroom homes for the most part, 1,500 square feet to 2,700 square feet as a range. These are product types that would fit that that demographic, if you will. On the rental side, well, the new homesteaders are at $31.86 for an affordable housing payment. They're more likely to pay half of that for rent. So maybe $1,700, $1,800 for rent. You know, really, someone paying $3,100 in rent in Goddard's not going to happen. But they will pay that for a house, and they will, you know, that will be their equity, for sure. Township travelers are a broader range of ages. They're under 55. They tend to be in the 35 to 44. This is part of this group are they could be mid-level managers at some of the companies that are nearby, and they're here for a year or two stint, and then they move on to the next assignment. The cruising to retirement, or the 55 and over, they may own a home that's valued at $490,000 or somewhere in this category, and they wish to sell it and downsize. That's a pattern that is happening. And so that's kind of, there are descriptions of each of these that I can provide you as well, so you get an idea of you know, what their shopping habits are, what their preferences are for services, etc. It helps to really build out a retail master plan for communities.
Mr. Hoffman, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the mayor's first comment and get your thoughts on, you know, what is your risk assessment? I think the root of what the mayor was asking was, what happens, you know, if we build out these 1,500 lots that are platted out and that last 250 of them sit empty because the market turns? I mean, what's your overall risk assessment with having the knowledge of doing this study? I'm assuming that Mike has sent you the platted lots that have been approved, you know, everything that could come online in the near future. What's your overall risk assessment of the negative impacts that could happen in a bad market event or something with those lots that we have approved?
Yeah, I would say well, with the lots approved where interest rates are, interest rates really push for rentals at the moment. I would say that there is a 10 to 15% risk exposure in thinking about it over the next 10 years. Again, and that is, you know, what's the probability of that occurrence happening? 1,500 plotted, approved, 200 sit empty and on the market for a while. I think that probability is around 10 to 15%, and it would need to be reevaluated based on the absorption of the 400 and some that have been approved already, and then just look at a steady measure. You really need a set of benchmarks to look at this on a monthly and quarterly basis. What's going on in the housing market? For right now, the housing market has performed exceptionally well in Wichita and the Goddard area. There have been some price decreases, but homes are still selling for what they're listing at. in this market. You can't say that for very many other markets. Same thing with Omaha and Lincoln, for example. And so the 10 to 15% is it's a standard error that's based on market conditions we can't measure. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 10 years with interest rates. We hear they're going to go down this year, maybe 1 or 2 times. We heard that last year, and so I think that's where the margin of error comes in, and why I would recommend the council and planning commission and staff really set up a benchmark report system to measure this on a monthly basis. You report to the commission, the planning commission, and the council. Here's what the market conditions look like. What do we have before us for approval? How well are these selling, etc. And so I think that helps to then mitigate those risks.
What are some of the specific warnings that we can look at locally that Mike has got all kinds of data at his fingertips? He knows as soon as something's being occupied in most circumstances. I mean, everything right now is occupancy certificate filled, if not ahead of time.
Right.
What are some specific measures or warning signs that we can look at locally and have him track that we can report on to our governing bodies?
If they're at 5% occupancy and ready to go, that's worrisome. I don't see that happens in Austin. Austin is overbuilt right now, and so there are multifamily apartments that are opening by Hines, for example, that are opening at 5 and 10% occupancy, even though they've had a long lease-up period. That's concerning. Here, if you look at the 900. This is for Wichita, obviously. We can drill down specifically to Goddard in each of these instances. 920 closed listings is only down 1% from last year, and interest rates are at 7%. Active listings are up 1.8 months supply. That's 38% higher than last year. New listings are up. Contracts written are down 4.3%. Anybody can speculate as to why that is. These are some good benchmark indicators useful for the for sale market. When you look at rentals, it is the occupancy. You really would like to have 55% occupied at the time of the property opens, because then your absorption for the rest of the year, for a developer anyway, that would be a very encouraging sign in a market like this. The 108 units, let's take that as an example. The family would like to see, I would presume, a 55-60% occupancy at opening. It might be 85%. It could be fully leased, depending on how the marketing, the branding, etc. goes pre-leasing of that property. And so that's how quickly this market responds. But certainly if you have anything under 50%, that's concerning for a multifamily developer, for sure. With these interest rates, the multifamily developers are full of luck.
How many days on the market becomes a concern? When is that? 6 days is fabulous.
Yeah, 6 days is great. If you're looking at 60 days, 90 days, you've got a really slow market. Even 30 days is fine, because that in some instances is to closing. So it's the time you sign the deal and then you close. If that's within a 30 to 45 window, that's a great timeline. If you get into 60 to 90, that's very slow and concerning. Just to go back for a moment, are the duplexes that were approved, are they all for sale then? Is there a mix of for sale and rental from a price point?
It's a mix, isn't it?
It's definitely
Yeah.
mixed. Some developers prefer they have their own management companies, and so they'll build and own.
For
and
sure.
manage. And other developers will build and sell homes immediately, or build and sell lots to
Yep.
duplex builders, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm blown away that the 320 is the low end.
Yeah, that's right.
And I really can't comprehend that. I mean, you can't get a house $250 anymore,
Right,
you know, so.
right. Yeah, I mean, we bought our house, 20 years ago, right? Lincoln, $1,500 square feet, built in the late 70s. We bought it for $110,000. We could not get in it today for under $325. It's just, you know, the scale of housing prices, the growth in those prices is extraordinary. And so, yeah, when you look at a $460,000 home today, it may be 1,500, 1,800 square feet. It's not likely to be on a large lot, you know, it's not a half-acre lot. And so the price points when what you get there are considerably different.
Would some of this data look different if you just, like you were saying, drill down to just the city of Goddard?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Actually, where I have compare with us similarly, that third bullet is based on more data that I have behind this report, and this is a summary statement. So there is a lot more data that was analyzed for the city of Goddard specifically that I can provide to Micah and get to all of you for your discussions, for sure. And I also think that based on that too, you know, it may also be helpful from a pricing standpoint where each of these, you know, what the price ranges are relative to the income of Goddard and the families that are moving in. So there's a lot more data that can be provided.
Do you see any communities, like, one of the things that we've been told is that for the developments to have smaller lots, put the duplexes on to spread the cost of development over more lots. Are there any places where instead of building duplexes, that they're actually building smaller family homes?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it just seems like we've kind of got focused on duplexes with, because of smaller lots, and maybe that's, that equivalency maybe, that needs to be maybe broken to where, could they build a 1,200 square foot house on a slab with a single car garage?
Sure.
And build it for 150, 170, you guys know more about construction than I do, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I grew up on a slab, 1,100 square foot with a single car garage, and you know, one bathroom. But you don't find houses that size anymore. And it's kind of like, well, the hardest home to buy, banker talk, is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And once you can get into a home and have some equity built up, that helps facilitate and grow the middle class.
For sure.
We are in an economic situation right now where we're killing the middle class in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we're killing the middle class in Sedgwick County.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't provide any, and we're not providing any opportunities for really, you know, an affordable starter home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are there any places in the United States or in the Midwest where you see homes being built, you know,
Actually,
at a smaller scale?
in Florida, I'm doing quite a bit of work in Orlando, Tampa, and then Sarasota with single-family home builders. So D.R. Horton, for example, Lennar. And in order to reach out, you know, there's a lot of single-family rentals that are going on that are smaller footprint, but then to move from single-family rentals into home ownership is the step that they're creating in those markets. Austin is doing it, Dallas is doing it as
So
well.
how are they doing it? What are some
Well, they have
specifics
to have large tracts of land, so we're talking 25 acres or more, in order to create economies to build out the smaller template of homes. And so there's an economy of scale to doing that. I don't know where there would be, maybe you do have 25, maybe you have 50, I don't know what
There's a
your
lot of
acreage.
ground, there's a lot of ground between here and
Right.
Colorado.
Do you know what their lot sizes are for that type of?
I don't, but I can get you all the information you want about that model. But that's, you know, and you'll want to have it then subdivided, and all the infrastructure be part of that, but that is where the economy of scale will come from for those builders. And for those builders to look at smaller lot sizes and smaller square footage for the housing. In addition to that, not just for that type of housing, where you select it, for multiple types of housing, right? I mean, that's where the additional layers of economics for home builders come into play, is when you're looking at a variety of different types of housing, for sale and for rent. So they're really eking out as much from each square foot of land that they possibly can. And that then becomes a decision for you. Well, how dense do you want Goddard to become? You enjoy a great deal of open space right now, it seems. And so I think a really legitimate question from a planning standpoint is, you know, what is your density requirement for housing? Do you want 5 units? Do you want 5 houses per acre? Do you want 100 housing units per acre? I mean, you know, what is that range, and how do you define that range to manage and accommodate the growth of your city?
Then you also balance that out with creating more green space, more parks.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, for sure. There is nothing better for home values than green space. Parks, trails, splash pads, you know, et cetera. The amenities of a community is what makes the pricing of your city so attractive.
And as far as the density goes,
Yeah.
can a city or town have both? I mean, we've kind of got that here. There's some houses on the south side of town that'll have 3 or 4 acre lots. We've got a lot of the neighborhoods that have maybe a half acre lots. And,
For sure.
but then couldn't we also have an area that had apartments where you've got a
Oh,
140
absolutely.
acre or something? And
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have that as part of your master plan? Do you have those, is that part of your master plan now? And so I think you just,
We can update our master plan.
you know, you just use that, you use that as a guide. Use that as a guide.
Maybe we should consider that.
But also, how much density within the city limits of Goddard do we want that to look like? You know, do we want most of that to be looking like duplexes, or do we want most of that to be looking like single-family homes? And I'm talking about not a 10-minute drive. I'm talking about the parameters of Goddard city limits.
Yeah, that's why you're all in those seats you're in. Those are, right, I mean, that becomes these are really subjective attributes of how you want your city to look, not only now, but for your kids, your grandkids, long term. And you know, those are the hard decisions you face as council members and commissioners, quite frankly. For us, all, you know, we can help you make those decisions. We can drill down more into the housing market for the city of Goddard specifically. We can drill down into look at density issues and the multiple density issues as you've raised, Jim, you've raised. We can look at that relative to your point. Thank you for the clarification. For your point on what the risk is in each of those. So all of this becomes a real, you know, sort of a very iterative process to help you make the best informed decisions about your community's future as you possibly can.
Mr. Hoffman, I had another question.
Jerry, please.
Jerry, tell me this, the less value per acre or less density that you have, is that going to equate to less services and create more of a bedroom community? So I guess the point is, if we're only generating single family homes on big lots, we don't have residential density, are we going to lack for services and be more of a bedroom community where people are just coming to, you know, reside and sleep in their nice big home, but they're driving to Wichita for their retail and professional service needs? Are those disconnected links or?
No, not at all. No, they're actually very, very connected. Yes, of course. The old adage that retail follows rooftops holds today in the 21st century as it did in the mid-1900s when they were building shopping malls around the country. And so, you know, the greater density you have, then the more propensity a community will have to support retail in addition to Walmart, right? And so maybe in addition to one or two grocery anchored centers. And so yeah, it becomes a matter of scale at that point in terms of the density of housing, its relationship to the retail economy, retail and services economy.
So I don't think this is a revelation that I've somehow discovered. I think generally the room sees that, but predominantly up until maybe the last year or two, we've been a primarily single-family driven oriented community from a development perspective.
Right.
So we don't have a lot of the retail stuff. In fact, if we didn't have US 54, we probably wouldn't have any. We've got a lot of junior box and those kinds of things along there, and we do have some good professional services, but I think we have a lot of gaps there because we don't have any residential density yet.
Yeah.
We've got some coming with the 108 units you mentioned, a couple of other, you know, Class A apartment, Class B apartment prospects, but we've had a hard time, you know, communicating with the community. One of the reasons why the staff has tried hard to recruit those types of developments is because the citizens want services.
Right.
So I just wanted to see if that was your perspective too, as far as the density and the retail rooftops, et cetera.
Yeah, I love it when I interact with city council and with the community, because everybody wants a cheesecake factory in their community. We want a cheesecake factory. Well, you know, you got to walk through how much population you need inside of a mile, blah, blah, blah. And by that time, it's like, oh, forget it. I'll just go to Kansas City, go to, you know, and the idea gets lost. But the idea is that you will need more people to, you know, to create more grocery anchored centers and grow the economy from really, you know, basic needs of services into something that is more specialized, if you will. Although I wouldn't want to focus too much to cannibalize the Haystack hamburger that's available at a good restaurant here named
The Anchor.
The Anchor. That great name. It anchors the community with good food. You know, but how do you create more of those opportunities is by having more people.
The other thing though,
I don't need to provide data that.
but to piggyback onto that, really what's happened though is, I mean, we've gone from basically 1,750 homes.
Yeah.
And now if everything builds out, we're gonna have 3,300 living units.
Right.
And so, the things you're talking about in terms of tracking, managing, pinpointing some of these things in terms of the different types of developments are things that, instead of us just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, we can start making decisions that are data driven and come to some consensus in terms of what type of community we want to be. If we're going to have density, we've planned in and also included green space. We're behind the 8 ball, I think, in terms of where we are, and we need to kind of get caught up in terms of managing the process going forward and having the appropriate data to help drive us. I mean, for me, looking at all the numbers, you know, I understand the 5 mile, 10 mile thing, but I'd like to see more data specifically on Goddard itself. I'd like to have a little bit of better understanding of what's going on in like the 3 mile corridor. If you made go 3 miles east of town and then go up 5 miles, and what's going on in West Wichita, because those apartments you mentioned next to that school, that's Wichita, 167.
That's what Michael was saying.
167.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't realize that.
So,
yeah.
and then if you go further north, I believe Wichita's actually dropped across 167th Street. And so, I mean, there's that's a different dynamic too to consider in terms of what kind of pressure that they're not gonna stop
For sure.
But my understanding is that there are hardly any apartments that are within the Goddard School District that have been built in the last 25 or 30 years.
That's right.
So that, I mean,
Yeah.
and I know, talking to the county commissioners, this whole thing about why we don't have any apartments, and I didn't get a really good chance to answer the question, but the answer probably should have been, we're not right next to a New Market Square where there's this gigantic retail development.
Yeah.
So the other problem we have, it's not really a problem, but an issue is some of the landowners around here are pretty pricey with their land.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
there's a dynamic there too, where we could grow to 10,000 and still not have any retail development if people don't come to terms and agreement on price on land to develop the retail.
Yeah, well, right, and they're responding to market, obviously,
Yeah.
and why not?
Well, you know, how do you establish price? Two fools come together and agree on something, right?
There you go, and that's happening, but, you know, I think on the retail piece, there are some very good examples in Wichita of what to be mindful of, and it goes back to your issue of density and your issues around managing growth. If you take Newmarket as an example, and the replacement tenants, if you will, from the original tenants, and how it's become more difficult to lease those properties. You look at the area where Topgolf is, right? Topgolf, I don't know if it's finished or if it's open yet. I haven't been in that part of Wichita for about a year. And if you look at that retail, it has taken a long time to lease up. And that's in a fairly fast-growing area of the market. And that, I think that's also where, is it 400 that is being expanded on the northeast side of Wichita? What is
Highway
96, thank you, Highway 96. That will help build out that retail. But I think those are and when you look at the two town centers, the Simon properties, how they have struggled. Not because the market isn't right, there isn't enough spending in the market, because there certainly is. You know, you have had department stores just sort of collapse, and therefore this retail market has collapsed and can only support one major retail center, not two. Well, I think those are all analogs for you to think about in managing the growth of retail here, because you don't want to have empty retail spaces in your community, in anybody's community. That devalues the property, the homes, it makes it unattractive to move in, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think this dynamic between understanding the housing and the growth in housing and decisions around housing and where housing goes and how dense it is in one area of the city and versus another plays a very significant role in how you also manage retail. Every city wants more retail, I know that. You love the sales tax revenues, and why wouldn't you use that to help build your communities long term? But if you overbuild or have an overbuilt situation where there are vacancies, you're not getting sales tax revenues from those vacancies. And so, and I think that has ripple effects throughout your community. So those are some other considerations I think you need to, take in strides around this growth in population, households, income levels. What is the supportability of new housing types? What is the number of months of inventory on the market next month versus last June when I looked at this study? And have these data points inform your decisions around both of those pieces, the retail services and the housing growth. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. You are all astute. I'm but a muse in your world. You know what you're doing.
You can see the journal running in everybody's head right now.
And just like the retail situation, we don't want empty houses, we don't want empty duplexes duplexes either.
Exactly.
So, if they're fully occupied and people are in them, that's one thing, but if they're built and then they don't get occupied, then we're a city of duplexes. So, I mean,
Exactly, right.
it's just this tight
Right.
rope.
It's a tight rope in a tight market. And a tight market drives those decisions around property types. And my speculation, only because I work with the developers on the other side for housing, is, you know, they're looking at this market, they got that approval because they've done their feasibility studies and underwriting and have looked at how quickly they will be sucked, what the absorption periods are for those number of duplexes. Now, I don't know what the science is behind the ones that you have approved and that are going into the development, but that science is what we work with developers on. And so they must understand right now that they can absorb those quickly and do it for a profit, obviously. Otherwise, it would not have done. But to your point, exactly, at what point are you approving too much? And if you're approving too much, you know, and all of this gets delivered in bulk, what are the implications on your community from that? Yeah. Because then you've got all these infrastructure issues, right? I mean, you've got the 400 is packed with cars, people's, you know, your commute time is extended, and you're living out here because it's a good life, and you don't want to erode those attributes of your community.
I think we're bottlenecked though, because that's all we really have is single family and duplexes.
Yeah,
I
right.
think we had more the middle spectrum up there that opens up more opportunity. I mean, the key thing that you pointed out is like, you know, I'm 54 this year, but I'm already gotten a downsized mind.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so to take to sell my home and buy something smaller, and whether it's it won't be a duplex, but if there's other variable choices out there that would be appealing,
Yeah.
you know, that's just my mindset on it.
For
We're
sure.
gonna have the existing market open up as well, the more variety we can supply here, and the density will correct itself, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the market will make that correction, for sure.
You better price that senior center, because they're expensive. Cheaper than stay where they're at.
And senior centers today aren't like the ones we visit our grandparents in. I don't think they are anyway.
I got a 20-year-old mind and a 54-year-old body.
It's an active lifestyle.
Speaking of the market and
Yeah.
supply, and you kind of spoke on it, the developers, you know,
Yeah.
they're the ones putting the money down, they're the ones at risk. I mean, if they were seeing that bungalow courts were what was selling, I would think they'd be building that. Or if they saw that would work with what they thought the market here needed, I think they'd be building that. But the fact that these guys, this is their business, this is their trade, this is what they do to make money, and that they're saying that duplexes are the way that what the market's asking for here, I mean, I think that at least needs to be given some weight, that the experts, the developers, that's what they're thinking is needed, and if they, and I don't know this for sure, but if these are all professionals, and that number of the 420 have already approved, I would guess they know that as well, and if they think that there's room and are willing to put their money down, that there's sufficient capacity for these additional E units, I think that needs to be at least taken into consideration.
Well, there's a couple things in that. One is, we're at risk too, because when we point those temporary notes, until the things get built out and filled and taxes paid, we're at risk. The other thing is the economics of duplexes. If I can build a $350,000 duplex with a $350,000 home, I put high-end finishes in my $350,000 home, but in my duplex, I don't have to put granite countertops. So I can make $50,000 to $60,000 on my $350,000 home, or I can make $70,000 on my duplex. And because the economics are where they are, if I can't sell it, I can rent it and it cash flows. And so it's an economic incentive. The problem is there's no economic incentive to build the small house, the starter homes. And
But I think to your point, that I think that's market driven,
right.
right?
To the builder, to the point of the builder.
No, it's
No,
market
because
driven by the
you've
consumer.
got a whole group of people out
By
here
the
that wanna
consumer.
buy a smaller home, they can't afford to buy it.
Well, but I think here's the nuance, right? You asked about communities that have the smaller houses and things. Go down to Oklahoma City, okay? They have very small homes, right? Owner occupied, but it is what you get, right? You're not moving walls. You have two flooring options. You have one window option. You have all, you are getting what you're getting.
But they don't stay
Right.
there for 30 years, people move
Right,
on.
but
The average
the
life
way-
of a mortgage is 7
This
years.
market has been a custom market. That's what people have asked for. Right? And so that's some of the subjective value that we're talking about here is what is the consumer willing to pay for? If the consumer is willing to go to that tract building, the Lennar, the D8 Horton that he's talking about, that's a different model. That's a different home. That's a cheaper version of what you're asking for.
Right.
But at this point, the market hasn't been willing to go for that.
But who's making that decision?
The buyer.
The buyer.
That's a buyer,
Right.
buyers
But
in
if there's no option for that in the market, the prices
they're
of homes.
fighting it in Wichita.
Well,
Yeah.
but the prices and everything and inflation have driven up these housing prices so fast in the
No
last
doubt.
9 or 10 years.
No doubt.
That those homes there's an economic incentive not to build them, is my point.
Yeah, for sure, I understand the.
Because the buyer's still buying them.
Right.
Otherwise they'd be changing the law.
Right. To your point, if the people willing to put the money out there, that's why those homes aren't here. Because they don't see that as a wise investment decision to build that type of home here.
I think there's also something that we just have to be honest about, is generations are changing. And most people my age, like obviously you guys know I'm fairly young. My generation would rather pay $1,500 and be in a rental where somebody else fixes every problem that comes up. I get a leak, I call my landlord. A lot of those, the mowing's done for me. And that's just, this generation doesn't care about ownership. If I can sit here and pay the same amount, my duplex that I moved, when I first moved into Goddard years ago, my duplex was nicer than the house I own now. It just was. It was beautiful. And I didn't have to take care of anything. And now I've got to fix a water heater. And so there's just, honestly, this generation does not care about ownership. If I could have somebody else do all the hard work for me. So I think that there is a shift happening of, if I can rent for the same price and not have to do the work, that's just what our age group is doing.
Yeah, but that evolves with age.
I hope
That mindset does change over time.
Hey, I'm 26 last week. I'm getting up there.
Perfect example, but I know folks your age as well that are dying to move here, that can't afford $320,000. We want to start out a family.
Yeah.
We want more multiple choices out here that are more affordable, just from my perspective. And that just goes along the food chain, right? The more people move in there, as they mature, they're gonna wanna buy a bigger house, or as life progresses, they'll move up, but somebody else will move back into that spot. They've gotta keep that life flow going.
For sure. Well, and a few years ago when we were trying to move, we were in the duplex, we needed somewhere to go. There was nowhere in Goddard. There wasn't an option. We couldn't afford $1,700 rent. So we were forced to move into Wichita, into an apartment there. And then when it was time to come out, there were 2 houses on the market that were under $500,000. So I either got the house I bought for $230,000, or the other one was $200,000 and it's a piece of junk. There's nothing right now. And I know we have a lot of things approved, there's a lot of growth happening, but I promise you, there's people who want to be here. And I think that we need to be aware of what that generation actually wants, because it is changing. Over time, it's changing.
Maybe we are going to business of buying up properties.
There we go.
I think we've got some realtors already doing that. I think I just mentioned, we're Jamie here, just in the interest of time, I think we're probably at a good point to stop for this evening. Appreciate.
say something, George. I'm sorry, this is actually, citizen comments are over right now.
We close
Deliberation. Appreciate that.
But I think maybe some of the data that we've talked about that we haven't looked at yet, I think would be good to look at. Maybe in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we can set up a time and have it and get together again and kind of continue this discussion. I think for me, what the decisions that we make going forward, I think it's important that we're looking at data and making, data-driven decisions. The modeling you're talking about in terms of tracking what's going on here, I think is really valuable and important, and something that we need to be working on. And if you guys are watching that and we're watching that, then we can adjust things as we're going. So if you guys don't mind, at this point, I'll seek a motion to close our portion of our meeting, and we'll adjourn and then set up a time for a continuation of this. Is that agreeable to everyone around here?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that the council meeting is adjourned. Keaton seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
Now you guys can have
You guys are
I'll
welcome to join.
be in touch with Micah and then we can get everything communicated.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I got a motion. And who's second on that? Very good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. This is item D, citizens' comments, so anybody at this point, if they, I believe there's one gentleman who did want to speak, is left, so, Mr. Chair, at this point,
Close good citizens' comments.
very good. Close the citizens' comments. This is item E, approval of the minutes, this is the consideration of approval of the minutes of May 13th and June 10th.
Motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the May 13th and the minutes for the June 10th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. This is item F, Board of Zoning Appeals. This is F1. This is reconsideration for the Maple Tree rezoning, case number zone-24-3. Quick background, Baughman Company submitted a rezone application on behalf of the developer Paul Industrial Lane, located off of 199 Maple in the southwest corner. Land is around 35 acres, lead platted to 88 lots. The developer would like to build single-family detached housing on this land as well as duplexes and several twin homes. This land was annexed into the corporate city limits on December 18th of 2023. During the April 8th of 2024 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission informed the developer that it would view the project favorably should it contain the following layout, with single-family lots being at 55 or 62.5%, duplex lots at 24 or 27.3%, twin homes at 9 or 10.2%. Furthermore, during the April 15, 2024 City Council meeting, the governing body stated that based on the discussion, the City Council was in consensus that this development was appropriate given the layout as presented according to the April 15, 2024 minutes. The conversation started at an hour and 16 minutes. On June 10th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, and after hearing the thoughts of the larger public, voted to approve the rezoning 6-0. On June 17th, the City Council reviewed the development and decided the majority vote to send it back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration with the understanding that the joint workshop will be held on this day to discuss growth and development and duplex ratios. And we obviously didn't discuss duplex ratios, so we'll just move on. Planning Commission is reconsidering the Maple Tree development zoning, 35 acres, single-family lots being best, duplex lots being best, twin homes being best, in the southwest corner of 198th and Maple. You've seen this before. This is where it's going to be located. Evening Shade, as mentioned, is over here in this area. This is a general layout. Plating obviously will formally be brought before you with the preliminary and final plat as discussed. Here's where they're looking to have the layout for the land uses. Single family will be yellow, twin homes will be here in the softer peach area, and then the darker one would be for the duplexes. This is one and then Maple on this one over here. It is recommended that the Planning Commission reaffirm their approval of the rezoning for the Maple Tree zoning case number 24-3. And we do have Bothman here as agent for the applicant. We do have one question for Bothman at this point. Conversation, discussion.
I guess the first question I was asked, anybody having change of heart? Based on our discussion this evening? Mr. Parks? Anything?
I appreciate you.
If there's no further discussion, I'm looking for a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve the rezoning of Maple, whatever it is. Maple Tree zoning case number 24-3, with the same covenant that we put in last time.
Very good.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Seeing none, we'll consider the motion passed. We'll bring it before the City Council on July 15th. Thank you very much. Old business, there is none. New business, there is none. Staff report, there is none. And we're on item J, this is Planning Commissioner comments.
None for me, Mr. Ford. I just couldn't see you before.
It seemed like there was consensus that at least in my opinion, it seemed like there was consensus that everybody up here tonight was interested in having homes that younger families and less expensive homes, and it seemed like maybe some of the concern was what that looks like. At the time, at this point, it seems like the option is either single-family homes, which are pricing people out of the market, and duplexes / townhomes, which will hopefully be less expensive and allow people to get into the market. So at least for me personally, that's where my head is at. Is that's the option to get the housing prices so that other people can move in here, so people who can't afford the expensive single-family homes can move here. And if there are other options in the future, I think that'd be great. But the options that are presented to us, I think the duplex and the twin homes are where it's at for now.
Yeah, I think you're right. We can't really control the market. And density aside, all we're really concerned about is quality of life. And we're trying to project out 10, 20 years into the future. So we need to figure out the components that keep as the density changes, you keep the level of quality of life in your community that you want. Mm-hmm. So you're right, we can't control what's coming in, but we do want people out here. So we need to find those things that keep the quality of life where we all kind of saw it going when we grew up here or came out here. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the underlying issue there.
What's that look like for those that have been here forever? don't necessarily want their portion of the pie to be changed. How do we manage that? You know, I mean, we've kind of run into that Trails End. You
It's
know,
always
maybe-
been a slow-moving train, and now things
Right.
have sped up a little bit, and it's kind of getting everybody a little on edge. So we just have to make sure that the quality of life components are in place as property changes hands and things get developed. You make sure that you have those reserves built in, so you have the green space and the walkability, and the entertainment areas and everything is there. Yeah, and we just kind of don't see a depletion of the quality of life. That's really it.
And I think the other thing is we, since I'm on the session, I don't think we approved the, anything that's just twin homes or duplexes. There's always some stuff happening. And I know there's continued debate about 7%, but I think if we kind of, as we discussed that, we kind of come to, it's more about looking at the project and making sure that that's right. So.
I think my concern would be, as much of these as we've already got out there on the books, like you said, we can't control the market, but if that does shift, does all of the types, I mean, say market comes off 2 points or whatever it is, does now that duplex kind of go back and, you know, in the back of somebody's head that could get into a starter home for, you know, $30,000 cheaper or whatever. I don't know. I'm not in my 20s anymore, so I can't tell you if that's the route it's going, but that kind of worries me a little bit.
Well, I think it was brought up during our previous discussion about the master plan for Goddard, and, you know, I don't, Mike, you probably know when it was originally written.
2015.
Okay. I mean, while that wasn't that many years ago, it's about a lifetime ago, which as many changes has been, to your point, which was affordability, interest rates, I mean, all of it, right? I mean, it's probably time to relook at that, make sure with what we know today, you know, making sure we're on that agreeable path, you know, so that we have something to measure against. To the mayor's point, I think, you know, at this point we're shooting in the dark, so we don't even know what the target is.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and we all probably would define the target a little bit differently based on whatever, you know, preferences and whatnot. You know, but unless we have that measuring stick, it's going to be tough to approve, deny, whatever, you know, whatever's coming in front of us. So.
Right. Do those have a life cycle?
Usually 10 years.
10 years.
My God.
We're right there.
I just add that our 10 years is up, and we're trying to find the right staffing level and the right the amount of time necessary to do a comprehensive plan. It takes
Sure.
a lot of your time. Most specifically, the Planning Commission is heavily involved in a comprehensive plan. As some of you may remember from 2015, and they cost anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000. So we're trying to work that in to our 10-year capital improvement program. So we're kind of, you know, you got some new elected officials, a couple of new administrative staff. We're growing, we've got staffing, facility needs, so we're trying to just kind of fit it in there with all the other competing interests, but it's very important that we have that roadmap in place. I kind of see it as, you know, maybe next year, towards the end of the year, we kind of put pen to paper and start advertising for a firm to come in and lead that process. And maybe we start the comprehensive planning process in 2026. It'll take every bit of a year to 18 months, maybe 2 years. I mean, it takes a long time to do. So the other one's about up, and it's time to do a new one and start to account for all these changes and plan for the future. But it's going to take a lot of time and money to do the comp plan. It's a heavy process.
Sure. So along that same line with the comp plan, it was brought up a while back about this part of the old part of Goddard, and there's concerns about if housing here was destroyed because of the way the zoning is set up, that we wouldn't be able to rebuild some of the houses here. That got brought up with the comprehensive plan, and they said, well, let's get the comprehensive plan and look at that part of it. I still think that's a mistake. Why not just fix that and take that off the table of things? And to the mayor, George's comments tonight about small lot sizes and houses. The old town of Goddard is small lots. So if you wanted to see if there was a market for small single-family homes or starter homes, you can send voters into this part as part of that. So that's my 2 cents.
I was just starting when we brought that up, and Mike, did we identify something that we felt made that a non-issue? The overlay district in Old Town?
There's a couple different ways we could approach that situation. There was a couple of situations. For one, it had to do, I don't know if we want to hash this out again, but it's kind of convoluted. Some of the homes, if they were destroyed, could not be rebuilt. The way those subdivision regulations are written. If they were burned significantly, but could be rebuilt, that there's ways we could consider that with a variance. An overlay district, as mentioned, would be some way we can manage that, or if we wanted to identify, as Commissioner Hayden was saying, a specific area of Old Town to include in the comprehensive plan, or if we want to just take that out of the comprehensive plan entirely and focus just on the overlay district. An overlay district would just go into zoning. Anytime we do a zoning amendment, the overlay district would be similar to that. We would publish it in the paper, wait 20 days, take it to you guys, and then take it to the city council for final approval. It would just be like a rezoning, just another zoning level, basically. You can do that without a comp plan, and you can be done anytime, really, for that matter. It's just there's a lot of moving parts in regards to housing, obviously, as you've probably noticed, and for Old Town, as Commissioner Hayden was mentioning, it's not incentivized for anybody to build there. That's why we saw 321 North Pine be so combative. All right, that was kind of an interesting situation. You have one lot, very small. We only recently changed the zoning to allow for that to be built on in 2019, and so that was a weird situation. Like, okay, you can, but you can't. Duplex could be considered, and the duplex fit, but it was still, that was one lot, and the only thing they wanted to build on that one lot that sat vacant for 20 years was a duplex. That's the only thing they wanted to build in Old Town on a very small lot. Because as Commissioner Walker was saying, it's largely market driven. You could build a small house, but who's going to buy it? You can build the most elaborate house in the world and nobody would buy it. You could build the smallest house in the world and nobody would buy it. It just depends on what the market, what people want. And, everyone's got different opinions about interest in demography and group changes over time, and all of those are generally considered true. Homes in 1950 were smaller than homes being built today. Some of them didn't even have a kitchen. Nowadays it's a requirement. So home prices have gone up relative to the fact that construction costs have gone up because that's now considered a requirement. So you're not gonna, the thing is, I've talked to so many home builders and developers, and I said, hey, if I split a duplex had 4 bedrooms and 3 baths on one side and 2 bedrooms and 1 bath on the other side, and they said that's not possible. You'd never rent that other side. It'd be impossible because you'd never be able to rent a 2 and a 1. You always need at least a 2 and a 2 or a 3 and a 2. You need at least 2 bathrooms, generally speaking. And so that's what causes at least a half bath. And so there's weird dynamics that you just, I have to refine my education as I move along, and I'm talking to some banks about what they're looking at, and what for financing, what do developers need, is it land costs that's driving up housing values, what is this? I'm trying to wrap my mind around all these. That's why I hired Hoffman Strategy Groups, and they're not here anymore. But anyway, that's beside the point. But this is a constant refining of, because the markets change, and a house that you may have wanted in 1950 is not the same house that you want now, which may not be the same house people want in 2030. So our garage is going to get smaller. There's too many things to speculate on. It's just largely we're sensitive to market changes because we don't want homes to sit vacant, and so you don't want to incentivize a developer to build a bunch of homes that will never sell. That would be catastrophic for the city. So just things to think about. Okay. So next regular planning commission meeting will be August 12th, 2024, 7 p.m.
Looking for a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for your time. Let's have a good evening.